3.
Number 3.
Will album number 5 show up in time? We shall
Only
see.
you can vote and tell. All right, and we're back. It's like 2 days later?
It's 2 days later. Got a little more beard growth, and it's hours until I actually have to fly home. But the record did come in time, so we can do our last pick.
All right. So
I wanted to tease this pick. I wanted to start with this choice, but it didn't show up until yesterday, late, because I wanted to tease categories. This could have been a fulcrum album, an album that sits in the middle of a band's discography that really clearly delineates the old from the new. It could have been an album with a brother element to it, because even though there are no brothers in this band, it was a band formed from a band that had brothers in it. It could have been an underrated album, because for reasons we'll discuss in a second, I feel it is underrated. And lastly, it could be the Big Daddy, because it is just my favorite record, period, of all time. It is Talk Talk's The Color of Spring. So this came out in 1986, and when Mark Hollis died last year, 2019, I was surprised at the outpouring. It seemed like I saw a lot more of remembrances and stuff that would be more something you would see for a much bigger star. A lot more people than I was aware of had counted Mark Hollis as a influence, or a favorite, somebody who'd made music that was important to them. But even then, even finding out that they weren't overall as underappreciated as I thought they were, it was pretty much restricted to their last 2 albums. They put out 5 albums, and the last 2, Spirit of Eden and Laughing Stock, are revered sort of as ground zero for what they call post-rock. And their first 2 albums, which are The Party's Over, which I love that they call their debut album The Party's Over. It's like, what kind of downer band is this? And It's My Life, were both more of their time, very kind of 80s sounding. But I still think they're good records. I proselytize for their whole catalog. I think those first 2 albums are underrated, and I definitely think this, their third album, is very underrated, because it's not usually included in the conversation of their masterpieces of Spirit of Eden and Laughing Stock. And I think it is a total masterpiece, and it bridges the gap between those first 2 kind of synth pop albums. They got rid of all the synths, but they still have they're still compositional songs, whereas the last 2 albums felt more like nebulous sort of songs that came out of random snippets of recordings, and they kind of pieced together songs just with a meticulous nature. But these feel very much, these are songs, with hooks, but they're fantastic songs, and they're deep songs, and they're dark songs. And another category that this could have fallen into was albums that I was introduced to by my brother. I remember, it's one of the last times I remember, I can remember where we were driving, and we happened to both be in the car, and it was just the 2 of us, and you said, Oh, you gotta hear this. It's perfect for driving. It was dark,
Driving at night.
driving at night, and so yeah, and it did, and it made an impression on me, and I picked it up, and for years and years, it has been cited as, for me, as my favorite album.
Wow. Well, I still have that tape that we
That
use, and I
listen to
only
in the
have it
car.
on tape.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
And I got their best of. Um, and so I've kind of had that for a long time. So I found it really hard to find on CD. I never really found it on CD. Vinyl, I know sometimes it's been a pain in the butt to try and get.
Because this came out in 1986, so it came out before you would naturally expect to find the CD version of it. But I did buy it twice, and it was one of actually the very first albums that. So I bought it on CD, but also I rebought it. It was one of the very first remasters on CD that I ever bought. So it was remastered like in the 90s. Before that was really a.
The album cover looks a
thing.
little bit different than the tape. I almost want to pull out the tape just to see the difference. Let's see if it's right here.
There's really not a bum note on this album. I love every song. I love the closer, Time It's Time is my favorite album closer, bar none, of all time. But even the songs that were quote unquote hits, I guess the singles anyway. Life's What You Make It is a banger to just blast in the dark. There we go.
See, it looks
There's this cassette.
very different.
The butterflies are framed about the same. This, I think, is overall. This is much lighter. I think
It's more like a pastel-y type. Not,
yeah. So the colors feel a little washed out, but the image is the same. It's not even cropped differently. And all the little details. If you look at the butterflies, they're all obviously the heart one is the first one that catches your eye, but there's a rabbit face here, a raccoon over here, fish here. There's music notes on this one.
He's got the little skull.
Got the skull.
Sign for the lambs.
Yes. There's a little tiger one, tiger eye upside down. But yeah, so really in any of those categories, a fulcrum, music that you got from me, if that's a possibility, or just your favorite album, any of those things you could match.
That I got from you. I think actually I could go two ways with this. One would be the actual band that I learned from you. That I realized that I wanted was, and this album is probably my favorite album,
Okay.
which is weird. And I know for most people it is not. The Pixies Doolittle.
All right.
So I have Surferosa, but I only have it downloaded. But I still get to listen to those songs, and I like a lot of those songs, and a lot of people say that's their favorite. But this is the one. It's a little bit catchier. It's just, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like it should not work, but it does.
Yeah, it does.
It works incredibly well, and it just puts it all on a different level. And, I mean, I actually marred my body because of one of these songs. Number 13, Baby. So Number 13, Baby has a line in there, has a tattooed tit. Say number 13. So I have a tattoo, like right here, that says number 13. The thing is it used to say number 13. So it's done in a script, kind of like how this script is. NO.13. But I got that like 22, 23 years ago, so now it just says knob.
All things must pass. But yeah, that is a great record.
And I only had the first two Pixies records. Now, something that kind of has this aesthetic to it that is also post-rock is Earth. And this makes me think very much of
those Ladder Talk Talk.
Not even necessarily the Ladder Talk Talk. It's just very, very spatial music. Now, when we talk about the Pixies, you're kind of aware that they're in a room. But Talk Talk and this band, it just feels like if you close your eyes and you're listening, you're in the right spot, dude. It's an infinite space that you're in. It's like their music comes across like it's everywhere. Like if you just stop and listen, like oh, I can hear the birds, but it's like, oh, I can hear Talk Talk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just the way that it comes on and the way that it fills space in my mind. Both of these albums kind of, the colors I think of my mind when I listen to it are like, which is funny because that one's called The Color of Spring, but I think of like browns and orange, like fall colors when I hear it. So the irony that it's called that and it's so dark.
Yeah.
And this is kind of similar. It's just very long, drawn out, very
kind of deliberate,
cavernous.
Yeah.
You can
you
hear the
played this
reverb.
a couple of days ago for me. I hadn't heard it before, and they're all instrumentals.
All instrumentals. And so that's cool too, because sometimes you can listen to this, like I said, and just relax. And
it's called "The Bees Made Honey in the Lion's Skull."
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's a beautiful album cover and beautiful record. It's the guys from, and I don't know that much about it. I know I probably should know these names of these guys. The only thing I know is, and girl, is they're connected to the band Sun. So somehow this is one of the guys in the band's son, which is spelled, I think, like, I'll put up the little graphic for it. It's weird how they spell it. But yeah, that puts me in that same headspace of Talk Talk, where, and that's the thing is that Mark Hollis's vocals are so, I don't want to say subdued, but you almost have to really pay attention to what he's saying. He's just kind of just making a noise of it. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing. There isn't any staccato in his voice. It's just very, very fluid.
A lot of it, and funnily enough, that a lot of that is reflected in the handwritten lyric sheets that you can't hardly read, so you can't hardly understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And you can't hardly read the words to clarify what it is that he's saying. And it feels like over time, that was one thing that definitely progressed over time, is that he tried to pull back so that nothing other than the absolutely necessary was in there. And it was almost like lyrics got pared down to just kind of words,
Desire is such a, and that's one, I love it, but so many people that hear it will be like, man, you listen to some weird music. And it's like,
But yeah, I feel like those last two records take a commitment to kind of get familiar with. But I feel like The Color of Spring,
I like that one.
Less so.
That's one of those albums that I liked right from the get-go.
yeah, it starts with some tight percussion. that really feels like it was recorded inside your skull. When you turn out all the lights and all the distractions, and it does it.
It takes you to
Transports
another
you,
place, yeah.
And so, anyway, that was my 5 picks. So, I want to thank Eric for having me on his show. And as I'm flying home later today, I look forward to seeing these at some point on the interwebs,
It will
the
be on there.
YouTubes.
Just got we just gotta edit them.
Yes.
So as soon as I get them all edited, well, not all, I'm just gonna edit them a bit at a time.
Yeah.
So we got the other conversation, we got this one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. All right.
I guess that's it for this one. So, all right, we're done.
All right. Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yes.
All right, so it's a couple months later. I've had a good chance to go in and really listen to these 5 albums, and I'm going to be honest from the start. I like them all. They're all really good. I just want to go over the reasons why I think they're so good. So if you thought this was going to be like a review, where I kind of shit on them, no, it's not going to happen. It's just going to be praise. I am particular about what albums I get. My brother did a very good job of getting music I like. He knows my musical taste enough to where he can push me a little bit in directions to try and listen to new things. And some of this stuff was old familiar classics for me, and some of this was totally new. So the first record that he picked, or that we showed, was Camper Van Beethoven's Key Lime Pie. I have Camper Van Beethoven okay, so I have Telephone Free Landslide. So I do have Telephone Free Jesus Christ. I do have Telephone Free Victory Landslide. No, that's not it. It's Landslide Victory. Okay, so I have Telephone Free Landslide Victory. I don't know why I have such a brain fart with that album title. Key Lime Pie is much easier to remember. But when I listen to that sound, it's definitely much rawer than this one. This is getting more into kind of the production that you would see in David Lowery's later work, when he got with Cracker. This is a beautifully produced album, but it still has that kind of raw feel to it, but it almost comes through more in the music. Like there's some more kind of goofball-y stuff in this one still, but there's a lot of stuff in here that's just very bittersweet and very, very pretty. There's some really pretty songs on here. Again, I'm still learning what some of these songs are, but some of them feel more country, like the country that David Lowery did with Cracker. This album does a great job of keeping that classic camper sound, but just boosting it a little bit, or at least to my comparison with the Telephone Free Victory, Landslide Victory. But yeah, it's still kind of a strange sound. It's like that Eastern Bloc European sound mixed with the Bakersfield sound. It's great. It's like Johnny Rotten meets Tom Petty meets Frank Zappa. And all of those kind of bits of those sounds are all mushed together and come together to make their sound. Um, yeah, I think personally it's a really good album. I like it already more than I do the first one that I have from them. Which is saying a lot, because usually when I hear a certain album first, I tend to like that one more than later ones I hear later on down the road, which to me is a sign that a band is pretty good. If I can go, okay, no, now I like this album much more. But yeah, this is a great album. 3 sides are at 33 and a third speed, and the last side is at 45 RPMs. So yeah, that first one definitely was a banger. Camper Van Beethoven, Key Lime Pie. So the next album that he brought out was Temples, Sun Structures. This is a big, bombastic, booming sound that comes out of this album. Almost feels like even the quieter parts are just boom. It's very Phil Spector-esque in the production on this. It sounds like they recorded it in this building, like it's empty on the inside, and you just get all of the echoes. There's tons of reverb. Again, it's infinite space as you listen to it, but it feels like it's just coming from the cosmos and just hitting you, like gamma rays hitting your body, which is probably how they thought of Sun Structures. I don't know. But this was out of all the albums that he brought that I didn't know. This one I latched onto right away. It has such a... Not only is it big and bombastic, but it's beautiful too. The way these things just build and come down again, it just... I don't know. It makes me think of something, but I can't think of what it is. The standout tracks on here for me: Shelter Song, Colors of Life, A Question Isn't Answered, Keep It in the Dark. They're all really good. Some of these really, really just blast you off. They sound so good. It's really good modern psych. They do borrow kind of the sound from the 60s. You definitely hear some Donovan. You definitely hear like the Byrds. Just that poppy 60s psych sound. But it sounds new and it sounds fresh. It still sounds modern, even though it's aware of itself, harking back to an older time. This is a fantastic album. I'm looking forward to getting more from the Temples, or from Temples. If you see this album, get it. It is so good. It's just a good one for just like... And it's not all peace and love. I think that's what the difference is. It has that 60s peace and love sound, but they're not necessarily singing about peace and love, it seems like to me. It's more like about a personal introspect. Almost like how Syd Barrett would see the world, just seeing it in a different way after doing, so much LSD. But if you don't have this, get it. It's fantastic. It's so good. So the next album that he got me was Spoon, Give Me Fiction. This was kind of the hardest album, not to get into, but to soak it all in. I'm still kind of learning the songs and stuff because it has a ton of music on it. Granted, some of them are different demos, different versions of songs, but still, it is just like a monster amount of music. So not only this came with a download card, so not only did you get the original album, all the demos, but then you got like 9 more songs of other versions of some of these songs and some B-sides, I think. So when I listen to that in the car, I mean, it literally takes a couple hours to get through the album. Or, yeah, almost like 2 hours to get through the whole thing. You're not aware of the 2 hours going by necessarily, but it does make it so that all of the songs kind of blend together. The Mathematical Mind is a good one on here. The first song on here is great. Sister Sat. See, I can't even talk. Sister Jack is a good one. Just every song in here is so good. And in the demos, it's the same thing. Even the demos sound really good. I mean, Spoon's sound is... When you listen to their production, they sound like they're in the room with you. You know, that's how it's... They do have some songs that I have on another album that kind of take you outside of that room, but this definitely has that sound while like they're in the room with you. It's just great, good, smart pop, rock and roll mix. You know, the artwork on this one was beautiful. We kind of went over it briefly, but there's really, so it came with a really, really pretty booklet. I don't know how well that's stuck in there. It feels super delicate. You know, pictures of the band, their thoughts of what they were going through during this album. Just page. So some of these have to do with the songs, I'm sure, because this is an art piece called The Beast and the Dragon, whatever that first song is called, The Beast and Dragon Adored. I believe that's the name of this tapestry. So, and it just gives their outline of what was going on at the time for this album for them. So, even though you've got all that time, the whole time you can actually sit down and just read all about, you know, the album, what they were going through at the time, and it kind of does a nice job of syncing up to what you're listening to. So, beautiful packaging on this here. It just feels solid. The only thing is I can't put it in an outer sleeve, where I might end up just slipping it in, but it's pretty thick. And so, getting in an outer sleeve, that means pulling it in and out of the outer sleeve all the time, which I don't particularly care for. So I don't know. I probably, because when I have a gatefold, I like to cover the whole thing still, but I do it in a way where I can still open the gate cover. So, and it came with a beautiful poster. So yeah, again, great music, great packaging. This is a way of, when a band does it right, that you can sit down and really interact with the music, with the packaging, and yeah, I mean, to me, that's what records are all about. If it was just about the music, then I would just stream it. So the next album he got me was Elbow, Leaders of the Free World. This album was the one that had to grow on me a little bit. And the more I listened to it, and when I actually got to sit down and listen to it properly, cranked loud, sitting in my listening chair, and just getting lost in it. This is definitely gonna turn out to be one of those albums that it might be that I don't know if like, you know, they say 20 albums you got to live with on a desert island. There, you know, the only 20 albums you can have. This might be one of those albums. These guys are brilliant. They bring different elements together which make a completely unique sound. It's kind of psychedelic in the sense of not like that they say trippy things or it's lyrically, you know, imposing or anything. Definitely, and it's very apparent in the first song. It feels like it's like you have some bands that do that trick where they sound like they're in a box or on the telephone, and then boom, you know, it's like a boom, they're in the room. Well, these guys start off in the room, and as their music builds, it just melts the walls away, and their sound just goes on for infinity. It's just so open and spatial. And for me, when I listen to music, I have like an area in my head that I, you know, it paints colors and shapes and does all kinds of weird things, just like you would see on, you know, your whatever those visualizers are on your player for your computer. Well, I already see that in my head when I listen to music, and this here just, man, it just fills up that space with so much texture, and they do such a good job of blending his voice and the music together that when it needs to be, his voice is out there more. And then as it grows and builds, it almost like it envelops him, and his voice starts to get a little bit lost in some of the songs in there. And that's fucking brilliant. I mean, it's so smooth and groovy. I mean, all the songs are good. Forget Myself is one that I'm, you know, is probably the standout track, but Mexican Standoff is really good. Even Station Approach, again, it starts off in one space and just completely takes you to another place. And that's what you feel in these songs. Sometimes they feel like they're in a hall. Sometimes they feel like they're in a theater. And then sometimes they're just out there in fucking space, just blasting it. And it's awesome. Kind of psychedelic in a weird way. Not in a nostalgic way, but just in a way that it just takes, at least for me, my mind to a completely different place. Great album. I'm definitely going to have to look into and figure out what the next one is I'm going to get from them. And then the last one was Talk Talk Color of Spring. This is just such an amazing album. This is another one where it'd have to go with me to the desert island. It had been years since I heard this track list, and this coming back into my life just brought back so many memories and just remembering some of these songs. I mean, it's been decades since I've heard April 5th, and I had forgotten about what a beautiful just it is. It's like the beginning of spring, but coming out of winter. You know, just it's such a beautiful display. I mean, lyrically, it's really strong. When you finally catch what he's saying, it's some of the lyrics are absolutely amazing. I remember this album is one of those albums where I would listen to the tape because I had tape, and sometimes they would work it where when you had a tape, you could figure out if I listen to this song to this point, I could just take it, turn over, and listen to the songs I like on the other side. That was our old version of skipping tracks. I did. I could listen to the whole thing, and it almost felt wrong not to listen to the whole thing. It's just all together, comes together so well, and it is. It's the turning point when they went from a certain kind of music to a completely different kind of music, and this is the bridge in between the two halves of Talk Talk's career. So yeah, thanks if you made it this far. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun watching this as I did making it. I tried a whole bunch of new stuff in this one. I know I probably should have said this earlier, but I'm saying it now. If you notice that little eye comes up in the corner, that's usually going to be a direct link to a song that I've picked from. From what I understand, I can get 5 of those things. So I think I'm going to keep my list from here on out to 5, so that if I do an album or a song, I can put that little information card in the corner, and you can click on that, and it will take you to the song that I'm talking about. So for me, Brother Eric, the Plastic Soundwave Cult, it ain't all about the music.